Good afternoon to all the participants. So today we are going to discuss on the physical simulation technique. So how we can utilize this physical simulation technique to understand the steel making practices. So that is the objective of my presentation. We all know that modeling and simulation is one of the primary tools we are using in most of the engineering practices to understand the process, to visualize the process, and to create more data or whatnot. This physical modeling and simulation is one of the most important and widely used in several disciplines, not only in metallurgy and materials related field, in chemical industries, in most of the manufacturing sectors, mineral beneficiation, in many sectors, and it have that much unique kind of property or kind of unique aspect related to this physical simulation, which will give you to visualize the process, and that is one of the most important thing. So before going into the subject, I would like to give a background of the steel industries, the development of steel industries that is happening over several decades. Let's see here. The first process we all officially we know that Bessemer process is one of the steel making unit operation that got developed around the mid of the 18th century, and after that it was open heart, and after that there was a basic oxygen furnace concepts had come into picture, and that is a BOF steel making process. And there is also electric arc furnace, which is parallelly got developed, which has taken basically scrap as an input, and then from that we used to produce alloy steels and several family of steels. And comfortably now the steel industries are lying with the root BOF, LF, vacuum degassing and continuous casting. Or else you can say electric arc furnace taking DRI or steel scrap as an input, as a raw material, followed by ladle refining furnace with or without vacuum degassing and continuous casting process, and there will be several downstream processes to shape the product and to get the specified mechanical properties. So this is on with respect to the process side, and if you see the product side, we can say that initially it was simply a carbon manganese steel, and after that there is something called IF steel, interstitial free steels, where the carbon, nitrogen and other interstitial elements are controlled within a narrow range, or you can say in a negligible range, and then a product has been developed, that is IF steel. And after that there is one another called HSLA steel, and now I think we can say that the steel industries are now at least with the first generation of advanced high strength steel. Although this process and product development has addressed by the researchers in a different group of people or different group of researchers, but there is a connectivity. You can see the carbon manganese steels that is being produced using the process of Bessemer, open heart, or initial stage of BOF. So with the help of those unit processes, these carbon manganese steels were produced. And as soon as that the secondary steel making processes or the ladle refining furnace or the vacuum technologies, when these things are coming into picture after 1950, maybe at least more than a half decade we have, means a couple of decades we have passed. Then this IF steel, HSLA steel and AHSS, advanced high strength steel first generation, they all are slowly coming into picture. So that's the one thing. There is a relation between process development and the product development. The new products are actually getting commercialized because of the innovations that being done in the process, improvement in the process. So this we should not basically we should not forget, or we should not keep it aside when we look into the different kind of products that is coming into the steel market. So let us see with some numbers. That the Bessemer process that have that is being started with some 5 tons of liquid steel which can be produced within 20 minutes, and later there was an open heart process where also steel scrap is used as a raw material to melt it with a combination of liquid raw material, and where that capacity of that open heart process can be something around 50 to 100 tons, and the process time that goes more than 8 hours. And the LD converter or the BOF steel making process, we know that which is capable to produce crude steel in 17 to 18 minutes. It's a process time only I'm telling, not the tap to tap time, of a capacity of 300 to 350 ton is possible. And parallelly, there is another process called electric arc furnace, which can produce 100 to 300 ton of melt in less than 30 minutes. So this is the evolution. The process got evolved from. You can see that there is a reduction in the time and the increase in the capacity. All these things are visually represented here. And if you see the process, how it is getting evolved and how it is getting declining, you can see the Bessemer process when it started rising, that the overall production capacity of the Bessemer, when it reached the peak, that time there is another process which actually started. When the open hearth reached its peak, there is another process which is the BOF process is getting place. And now you can see this BOF and the EAF are together, reaching to a peak. We do not know whether it is whether now is this in the peak value, or it is going to get a saturate, or is there any other steel making unit process which is actually getting started from this position? That we do not know. All our expectation is that there has to be some novel steel making process to compensate our energy consumption and the kind of environment extent of environment we are polluting with these processes. It is always there a thirst area for all the researchers and the industrialists to work on to come up with a new novel process which can, in a better way of energy and environment point of view. And what is the driving force for these process developments? If you see, the one is today it is less than 100 ppm. Less than 100 ppm in of phosphorus in the LD converter or BOF processes, basically it's not possible. It's a challenging task. So that is one of the driving forces for the process development. And improved decarbonization rate. You know that open hearth, which produced 8 hours, took 8 hours for producing 100 ton of crude steel. Now it is 30 minutes for 300 ton or 100 ton. So there is a scope for further reduction. If you save 1 minute, then you can get 1 additional heat in a day. And it is altogether a 300 ton or whatever the converter capacity, that much ton of additional steel amount you will be producing by saving 1 minute in a process. Okay. So if this 30 goes to 29 or 28, something like that, you can take 1 extra heat in that day, so that your production can be increased in multiple fold. Okay, so that's the beauty of this process, steel making processes, if you do innovation in that. And also the reduction in yield loss. We all know that BOF process that generates a slag which contains 20 to 25% of FeO, which is obviously the loss to the company, and also for the process it will come as a yield loss. So improvement in all these aspects will always encourage some new processes. And if you see in the casting side, you can see that initially it was ingot casting. After that it was conventional continuous casting, and this is thin slab casting. And now we all are aiming towards a novel process that is called the strip casting. In between there is one another called TSCR, thin slab continuous rolling, where in all the stages, if you see, there is a heating of ingot is a separate process before taking for the downstream. So in case of thin slab continuous rolling, it is a product which is coming from the continuous casting process that will be taken directly into the roller. Okay, that is a kind of process cutting down some of the unit processes so that you can save energy. So that's the aim. The strip process, the technologies are already available. The one is a cast strip, I think Australia based, and another is a post strip, which is in association with the POSCO Steel, Korean company. The capabilities are something like that. If you produce a cast strip of 0.8 to 2 mm by reducing the process steps, the energy consumption is something around 2 gigajoule per ton of energy. Yeah. And there will be a huge reduction in the carbon dioxide comparing to the conventional casting process. These are all the advantages. So So in terms of process, there are always innovations are happening, and there are one process which is replacing the another process, and now we do not know that we may be in a generation that where we are going to see another novel steel making process or something like that. So with all these imaginations, let us go now into the subject of today's subject, maybe what on the with respect to the steel cleanliness control in steel, and how the physical simulation techniques can be used for controlling the cleanliness and also for optimizing the process. So coming to the clean steel, somebody says that clean steel is nothing but an inclusion free steel. The non-metallic inclusions are the foreign particle which is getting generated inside the steel during solidification or during the refining process, which need to be effectively removed. But complete removal of inclusion is obviously it is not possible. So you can only control the inclusion. So that is one aspect. But many people think that inclusion-free steel is a clean steel. It's not. Industrialists, they used to define it as something like when a product complied to a standard, maybe rating methods. There are different rating methods are available. E45 for the long products and backward rating for especially for a product called tire cord or something like that. So when a product is complying to that sort of inclusions, then you can call that steel is a clean steel. But researchers always used to say that steel products which have inclusions in affordable number density with desirable composition as well as the morphology, then researchers can claim that is a clean steel. So the definition of clean steel varies from person to person, also from the industry or the researcher, or in other way you can define it on your own way also. So mainly this cleanliness control can be done in the ladle metallurgy, tundish metallurgy, and in the mold practices. These are all the intermediate steps that is being carried out after crude steel production and before casting. So this is a stage where you are getting some time to control your steel cleanliness. Okay. Now how it is basically affected, you can see there is a fluid flow. You are having purging in the ladle. So the you are basically encouraging the non-metallic inclusions to float out. So in that case, what is happening, because the non-metallic inclusions are lesser in density, so it tends to flow. So the fluid flow assisting its flotation, and which is driven by the kinetics and which is driven by the thermodynamic aspect, because there are chemical reactions between the non-metallic inclusions with refractory or the solute elements in the liquid steel, or even with the slag. There are several reactions. So the thermodynamics and the kinetics is governing all these things along with the fluid flow. Okay, so that's I'm trying to figure out here. It's a very complex thing. If you want to address, then you have to take all the things into picture, like steel, inclusion, slags, and refractories, everything. So now, with this brief introduction to the clean steel, let us move to the physical model and simulation. What does it say basically? Basically a model, it's a model in the sense you have one unit process in industry, say it is an LD process or a ladle or a tundish or a continuous casting. These all are, can be named as one of the unit processes. So you can scale down. First of all, you can study these unit processes by scaling down. So that the capacity of the converter or the ladle can be 300 ton or 250 ton, whatever may be, but you can proportionally you can scale it down, maybe 1/7 times or 1/5 times or whatever may be. But depending upon the phenomena you want to study, there is a provision you can scale down the unit process so that you can easily handle in your laboratory for your study. And what are the principles of this physical model? First of all, you have to maintain the geometric similarity. You have to maintain the geometry. But only what you want to do, you may need to scale down. There, if it is a 10 meter, here you can assume it for a 1 meter. So the scale down is happening in that fashion. Okay. So every model that you have it in your laboratory for understanding, that should definitely have a reference point in all the aspects of the model. That should have a reference point similar to in your industry converter also. So that's the principle behind in geometric similarity. In case of mechanical similarity, it includes three different: static, dynamic, and kinematic. Coming to the static, with respect to metallurgy, there is nothing. With respect to steel making operation, there is no major thing is there, because all your ladles or converter, everything is static only. The motion in the liquid is basically induced by your fluid flow, by purging or something like that. So that you can simulate in a different way by maintaining your dynamic similarity. I mean, dynamic similarity in the sense you need to maintain the forces, whatever forces acting on the industry, that should be maintained here rationally, or by adopting ratios of the forces. You have to maintain those dynamic similarity by maintaining the force ratios. Those are all called the numbers. What do you say? Froude numbers, Reynolds numbers, Euler number, all these things. Very specific to steel making, this Reynolds number and Froude number are more important. And you cannot maintain these two all at the same time. So always, most of the phenomena, if you see in the steel making, those all are Froude dominated phenomena. In Froude number mean it is nothing but a ratio of inertial force by gravitational force. Most of your phenomena in the steel making are Froude dominated. So it is better to maintain the Froude similarity between your model and the prototype, so as to simulate any steel making process. And another thing is the kinematic similarity, where it is coming by selecting a proper simulant. In your model, it can be water can be a simulant for steel, oil can be a simulant for slag. By maintaining the kinematic viscosity, for an example, I am telling the kinematic viscosity of liquid steel at 1600 degrees Celsius is most equal to kinematic viscosity of the water at room temperature. So what does it say? The fluid flow that you generate by maintaining the forces will be more or less similar, because that is induced with the kinematic viscosity. So mostly it is a viscous force that is inducing this flow, so which will be more or less similar. So that's the way by selecting a proper simulants, you can maintain this geometrical similarity and mechanical similarity. And another is a thermal similarity. So, and another is a chemical similarity. So this thermal similarity and chemical similarity, by name one can understand, by maintaining the temperatures and by maintaining some of the chemical reactions, whatever it is happening. So it is very difficult to simulate these two in the room temperature when you select water and other as a simulant. So that's the way. There are two models are possible. One is a cold model and the hot model. Cold model, where the chemical and thermal similarity cannot be met. So in that case, you have to get rid of these two similarities, and then you have to study such phenomena which is independent of these chemical reactions or the temperature difference, gradient of the temperature existing the converter or the process. And there is another thing is called a hot model, where you can try to maintain all these three. So in our presentation today, we are going to see one case study for cold model and one case study for the hot model. So let us see how this is a sort of research that in NML we are carrying for last maybe 6-7 years, that I will be describing here. So let us see what is the ladle refining process first. So that everyone knows that the ladle refining process is an intermediate process between this converter and the caster, where you can trim your alloy composition, increase your temperature, melt temperature, and you can degas by applying vacuum. All these, there are several functions are there for the ladle refining process. And if you see the process dynamics, it involves there is an organ purging from the bottom, and where the organ gases will try to move out from the ferrostatic head that lying above, and it will leave from the system by generating a eye, or what you call means it opening up the slag, and then the organ is getting released. There are a lot of theories. It have been studied by several research groups, and it's been established that this purging or the organ purging is basically the heartbeat of the process. If you do not have purging, then the steel that present in the ladle is basically assumed as a dead. You cannot do anything on that. You cannot add any any alloying additions. You cannot perform. And if you heat from using the electrode, then the heat cannot be homogeneously distributed. So nothing can be done. So the heartbeat of the process is nothing but the organ purging. That is being extensively studied by many people using cold model. So some of the examples I would like to highlight, whichever the results of the other researchers you can see in the next couple of slides. So the another thing we want to see, when the organ is basically here in this the bottom side figure, you can see when the organ plume is just evolving out from the steel, Here the slag layer is there, here the liquid layer is there. So it will basically, the droplet, the slag droplet will be generated because the argon will make the metal to circulate in this fashion. In this fashion, it will circulate and the argon gas will release. So when it is leaving and the slag droplets are generated, this slag droplets basically it undergoes slag metal reaction. What we see that desulfurization, inclusion removal, or all these things that is happening in the ladle furnace is basically due to this generation of slag droplets, which is getting the refining reaction. It will increase. The refining reaction will increase with increase in the droplet formation. That it depend upon your flow rate of your organ. If you increase the flow rate, your droplet generation will be high and the refining reaction will be high. And there is another zone where the refining reaction is happening, that is, it is marked as a B in the picture. This is nothing but a static top slag and the steel interface. Here you can expect minimum amount of interaction only because the surface area is very less compared to the droplets. When the droplets are coming into the slag, then you can expect more amount of refining reaction. So by the way, as I already told, if you inject argon, then there is a slag eye formation, and that slag eye is basically come out as a major limitation of the process because the metal is getting exposed to the atmosphere. The metal getting a chances to get reoxidized. The alloying elements will get fade out and it can trap oxygen from the atmosphere. So for all these reasons, the slag eye is basically a limitation of the purging process. So, so as to you have to optimize these two things, droplet generation and the slag eye formation. So that's one of the major limitation of the existing process. So the LF practice need to be optimized. And here I am showing one picture where you can see the slag droplet, which is collecting sulfur particle from the metal. It being trapped in one of our lollipop samples that taken in industry. So the slag droplets are basically involved in desulfurization reaction. It is just an proof that the slag droplets are involved in slag reaction. So now let's see how the peoples have studied using the water model. It's one of the physical simulation technique. You can see when you purge oxygen, when you purge argon for in the ladle, that will be slag eye formation. The slag eye will first form. It is a circle. Basically, it will follow a circle. The eye will evolve and then the eye will dissolve. So collapsing. This evolving and collapsing is a circle. It will happen. This phenomena, this evolving and collapsing circle, basically happens up to a critical argon flow rate. When you cross the critical argon flow rate, there will be a persistent slag eye formation. So the slag eye will be persistently present. It will not follow evolving and collapsing cycle. Till your evolving and collapsing cycle, that argon flow rate, what I'm naming as a critical argon flow rate, your mixing will be better. Whatever you are adding in the ladle, that will get mixed properly. So through water model, you can identify this critical argon flow rate, which you need to maintain in the industry so as to improve the mixing efficiency or to bring down the mixing time. So if you are operating with a higher argon flow rate, you may not get a proper mixing. You will be end up with an extended mixing time. You may need to give an additional time for the mixing. And also you can see the effect of flow rate. When you increase the flow rate, the slag eye is basically increasing. So when the slag eye is increasing, you are contaminating the steel more because it is getting more scope to reoxidize. You get to get contaminated with the atmospheric air. And you can see when you change the oil height. Here oil is a simulant, that is a brown color or the reddish one, kind of reddish brown, which is shown in all these pictures. It is oil. So that basically simulates the slag layer. If the slag layer height is varying, then you can see the slag eye formation is getting reduced because it requires more amount of momentum. That argon gas, the purging gas, requires more amount of momentum to create the slag eye. So it means if you have an optimum level of slag amount in the ladle, then you can expect more amount of energy, that the kinetic energy you are giving through the purging gas, that will be involved in mixing the metal which is lying below the slag. Okay, so you can see what are all sort of things you can optimize using this physical model technique: organ flow rate, mixing time, and the slag eye, and the reoxidation behavior. All these things are very critical when you talk about the ladle furnace operation. Okay, and another one what we know is a continuous casting process, where the liquid metal is first it will be transferred from ladle to tun dish and tun dish to mold. So these processes are basically called as teaming process, or you can say in a general way, transfer operation, liquid steel transfer operation. You are transferring the liquid steel from one vessel to another vessel. Okay, so there will be a guide tube, or you can call it as a refractory tube, or which can connect ladle and tun dish, and that will give adequate protection to the liquid steel when you are transferring from one vessel to another vessel. Basically, to prevent reoxidation, and it reduces heat loss because it is a refractory material, and also it will give you a laminar flow of liquid steel. It will prevent the turbulency inside the filling vessel. So all these things can be guided by this guide tube or the refractory tube, where you also in industry it is being called as a ladle nozzle, and in this case from tun dish to mold it is called as a submerged entry nozzles. Okay, so there are but the process, there is a one thing we want to give attention here is, while transferring there is a chances that vortex can form. Everyone could have visualized vortex formation in bathtub. Even in our home where the kitchen tub is there, you can find a vortex formation and the air will get entrapped. So the same phenomena will happen here also. The vortex can form in the ladle or in the tun dish, and it can entrap the overlying phase. Here it is nothing but slag, which will bring the slag into the vortex, and the vortex will carry the slag into the cast products. So the slags are nothing but the non-metallic particles, or you can say these are all detrimental foreign identity, which will deteriorate the steel properties. Okay, so you have to avoid this vortex formation. So there are some techniques through electromagnetic field or some sensors they use to detect when the slag is basically passing through the ladle, and then they will prevent the teaming process. They will stop the teaming process, and then they will throw out the left out metal and the slag. Okay, and that will also cause yield. If your vortex is forming at considerably higher heights, then you may need to lose most of your steel value. Okay, so the preventing vortex is one of the another thirst area, where NML is also being working in this transfer operation for at least for last 5 to 6 years. I would like to show some of the results maybe in another slides. Here you can see the functions of the major key functions of the tun dish. Maybe couple of decades ago, it being considered the tun dish is basically a buffer reactor. It do not have any chemical reactions, or it do not have any major role. It is just a transisting vessel where it being holded, the liquid steel is being holded in the vessel for a period of time, and then it is just transferred to mold. But today it's not like that. Tun dish performs several functions with respect to control of cleanliness. There are several major role being played by tun dish. You can see the metal will come from here, and then it will pass through a significant distance, and then it will reach the mold. Okay, if you increase the residence time of the liquid steel inside the tun dish, then you are getting enough chances that liquid steel, that the non-metallic inclusions can be float up. If it is reaching here, then the time that is spent in the tun dish is very less. So these aspects can also be optimized using the physical technique, and this has also been addressed by several researchers. Okay, how the residence time of the liquid steel can be increased by giving some furnitures like dam. Here it is a dam, and the turbo arrestor is placed here, where the turbulence that is generated in the liquid steel is being arrested, so that the laminar flow will be generated, so that the inclusion flotation will be enhanced. Okay, these are all the techniques. By putting up some special kind of furnitures, you can basically play with the tun dish performance, and then you can expect for a quality steel. Okay, Now let us see that in the CSIR NML laboratory, we have some setup, water model setup for Tundish operation to study the teaming process. As I told, there is a vortex formation. You can see there is a dimple is forming when the liquid when the water is getting teamed from this through this nozzle. You can expect at a certain height, at the critical height of liquid, the dimple will form and the tail will form and the tail will extend and the tail will ultimately it will reach to the nozzle. So here what it is happening, basically it is entrapping the overlying phase. Overlying phase here is nothing but it is air. Air is basically it is getting entrapped. If oil is there, then oil will be carried over into the along with the steel, liquid steel stream or this water stream. So this thing we have basically studied. Here you can see when you increase the flow rate, then in that case you can see basically the critical height for vortex formation it increases for all the nozzle diameter. We have studied for different nozzle diameter because these all are basically simulating the industry condition. When you increase the nozzle diameter, it means that your ladle nozzle diameter is getting increased in your sequence. In your first sequence, in your first heat of your sequence, it can be D, but when in the second heat, it may be D plus something. And in the third heat of the sequence, it may be D plus some another value. So that increase in the diameter can be studied by varying the nozzle diameter. So how we basically will optimize means we select those diameters for model study or the simulation study that I have already explained by maintaining the Froude number. Okay, Froude number where the velocity is given, that inertial force by gravitational force, the velocity of the water or the liquid shield that is being going into this will be taken into account, and the velocity in the industry will be taken into account. So we will maintain that Froude number and then we will study. So the parameters here are the flow rate, means the initial filling flow rate. When you fill the liquid water into this vessel, it will be in motion. So if you fill the liquid with a different flow rate, like 20 liter per minute, 30 liter per minute, 40 liter per minute, the the residual velocity that present in the liquid will be different. So what it is basically simulating? It is simulating your motions present in the liquid steel in your industry due to your turret rotation, lifting of the ladle, purging of your liquid steel with the organ. This all will set up, some amount of residual velocity in the liquid steel in the industry here that is being simulated by using a initial filling flow rate of water. Okay. So then another thing is a dwell time. Dwell time here is nothing but dwell time is the time that I am giving, standstill time after filling the vessel. I have to open the nozzle. It's a means a tap hole or the teaming hole nozzle. So the time lapse between filling completion and the opening, that is called as dwell time. So what it will happen during the dwell time, if I extend the dwell time, the residual motion in the water will die out, will get vanished. So a combination of flow rate and the dwell time basically will simulate your residual motion in the water, which will simulate the residual motion in the liquid steel. And here you can see the nozzle diameter. As I already told, the varying diameter, the increasing fraction of the nozzle diameter will simulate your erosion of your ladle nozzle in your industry practice. You can see when the nozzle diameter increases, the vortex height is decreasing. Vortex height in the sense the critical liquid height, means the amount of liquid that is left out in the water at the start of the vortex formation is getting decreased. Okay, this is because more amount of liquid is removed soon when you have a higher diameter. So obviously the liquid is, the vortex is expected to form in the lower height. So with all this detailed systematic experiment, we could able to propose some dimensionless equations which can predict for an industry practice at what height or at what time the vortex will form, and the industry operator need to be aware so that he can stop the process. So that equation is being proposed for a particular design of ladle. Okay, here you can see the Froude number is coming into picture, Reynolds number is coming into picture, and there is one d by d. It is nothing but that diameter of model and the diameter of it. It's a scale down, scale factor, basically d by d, m by m. Okay. So now I would like to bring your attention here to note that if you increase the diameter, it is decreasing, and if you increase the dwell time, the vortex height is decreasing, and if you increase the flow rate, it is increasing. This trend, we just I request all of you to remember, because we will see how the things are getting changed for tapping. This is steaming. Now I am going to talk about the tapping. Tapping is nothing but transfer of liquid steel from BOF or LD vessel to ladle. So both are transfer operation. Steaming is also transfer operation. Here it is also transfer operation. Okay, here the crude steel is being transferred, and there are primary deoxidations will take place. Some additions will be done during tapping in the ladle, and the slag formers we will add. Addition to that, there is a one phenomenon that is happening: slag carryover. As I already told, the responsible entity for the slag carryover is nothing but the vortex formation. The vortex is a gravity dependent phenomena. So it has to form in all the transfer operation, but at what position it is forming and how to control it, that matters. So this will, the vortex formation will give some difficulty in separating the slag and metal. Okay, drain vortices. There are some control methods that is being adopted in the industry. Dark and infrared cameras are being used. In NML, we studied this BOF tapping process also. You can see the BOF vessel is fabricated here, and the tap hole is here, and the vessel, this is a, you can call it as a ladle here, and it looks like this. Is a closer look of the BOF vessel is shown here, and you can see we used to keep a camera near to the tap hole so as to monitor the phenomena that is happening in the vicinity of the tap hole. The vortex formation, whatever I'm telling, those things were monitored using a waterproof camera. This is the experimental method we adopted to study how the tapping is happening and how the vortex formation is happening in the tapping process. And as I already mentioned, there is a slag carryover. It is happening during tapping. So we adopted a theoretical, fact-sage simulation based approach to quantify how much amount of slag is basically carrying over into the ladder. That is a systematic approach is there. I think as we are already running late, so I restrict myself to explain this thing. On interest, I can explain maybe later. So now I'm just mentioning that there is a theoretical approach we adopted to quantify the amount of slag carryover. So as I already told, the different parameters: initial filling flow rate, dwell time, nozzle diameter, and initial liquid height is also one parameter. That is amount of steel. A 140 ton BOF can operate with 130 ton, 150 ton, sometimes 160 ton also it can operate based on the life of the vessel. So that the liquid height is coming into picture. And oil height, it is the amount of slag, and type of oil. Type of oil here it simulates the slag with the different physical properties: viscosity, interfacial tension, all these things. So you may be surprised to see the tapping and teaming. Here, if you increase the dwell time, the vortex height is increasing. There in teaming, it was decreasing. And when you increase the flow rate, it is marginally it is decreasing. There it was increasing. So it was understood that in teaming, that was the understanding was with most of the researchers, that in all the transfer operations, if the residual motion in the liquid prevails, then it will assist for vortex formation. But we surprisingly, very interestingly, we could see that when the residual motion is present in the liquid, it is suppressing the vortex formation in BOF process. How it is happening, that we can see. Here, these are the results that being conducted with oil. You can see when the amount of oil increases, then the carryover ratio, that is the oil carryover, is increasing. And you can see when the different type of oil, it is plotted with a different type of oil. When you replot it with physical property, maybe the kinematic viscosity, you can see the kinematic viscosity. If the kinematic viscosity increases for the slag, then the slag carryover decreases. So that's the trend it will give when you plot it with the property. So as I told, why it is basically suppressing the vortex formation in the BOF process in spite of some residual motion exists in the liquid. What is the residual motion source in the industry? It is nothing but the supersonic velocity of oxygen that we are purging, we are injecting for refining. That will put the liquid steel in a very dynamic condition. It will be very turbulent condition is generated. So that will leave some amount of residual motion in the liquid. And also you are tilting the converter from upright position to the the tapping position. So during this process, there will be some residual motion will be generated. These all are the sources of residual motion. So now the finding is, if the residual motion present in the liquid, it will suppress the vortex formation. So let us see how it is happening. There is a rotational velocity prevailing in the draining liquid. Rotational velocity, nothing but I am here referring it as a residual motion. Okay. There is a transport of angular momentum to the nozzle axis. For the formation of vortex, the angular momentum in the liquid has to be transported and aligned to the nozzle axis. When this alignment of the angular momentum is happening right above the nozzle axis, then the vortex will initiate. This is called energy transfer. Apart from that, when the nozzle diameter increases, more amount of discharge is happening. So the volume is getting transferred. So there are two things it is happening. Energy transfer is there. Energy transfer here, it is an angular momentum prevail in the liquid, and one is a volume transfer. The whole volume is getting transferred, so the liquid height is decreasing. So in addition to this, these are all the two only thing happening in teaming process. There is one addition thing which is happening is a horizontal volume transfer. If you see the BOF tapping, the amount of liquid that is lying here, that also need to transfer from here to here. Other than the liquid is moving in the gravity direction, the liquid has to move from this direction. So this will basically impinge into the vortex, whatever it is forming. So this motion, the green color motion, what I'm denoted here, that will break the vortex, whatever it is forming in the gravity direction. So if you have more motion, liquid motion in the horizontal direction towards the nozzle, this will disturb the vortex. So that's the primary understanding is being developed using the physical technique, where you could be able to see that the dwell time increases, the vortex height increases, and the flow rate decreases, and the vortex height decreases. One of the major understanding that been improved, and here with this understanding, any industry can control the vortex formation without any external device. Like as I already told, infrared camera, dart, all these things are people are using. If you understand the dynamics of the process properly, and if you could able to predict the time at which actually the vortex is happening, you can perform tilt front or tilt back of your converter. Okay, tilt front or tilt back of your converter, so that you can induce the flow, horizontal flow, the vortex will get break. So the dart application, dart is an unsuccessful technology. You can say 70 to 60% only the performance of the dart is there. Most of the silicons are using. It depends on many physical things. You have to place it properly in the right position. There are several things associated with the dart technology. So it's a manual process, and there are some automated thing is there, but still you do not know where you are actually placing the dart to control the so as that dart has to stop your slack carryover. Okay, so this is one of our recent study, and the exhaustive study on that. And as I already told, we adopted some theoretical approaches to quantify the slack carryover. That is based on our 4 introduced factors: temperature factor, slack factor, solute factor, deoxidation factor. I am just running quickly this slide because this is a little away from the physical simulation. You can see this is the excess oxygen that is being carried over into the ladle is predicted by our equation. It is shown that the equation for the set of industry data is proposed here, and you can see the grade for different grade. From grade 1 to grade 10, if you move, the carbon and the phosphorus in the crude steel is lean. It means more amount of carbon and phosphorus is present in the grade 1 and grade 2. And when you move to 10, grade number 10, the carbon and the phosphorus level is very less. It means when you drive hard the BOF process, when you inject more oxygen, when you intensively running the BOF process to remove carbon and carbon and phosphorus, the physicochemical aspects of the slag will get changed, and that will basically encourage more amount of slag carryover. This is another finding we developed based on our theoretical approach, and the slag carryover is predicted with the proposed equation. and it is estimated also by FactSet simulation. Till 5 kilogram per ton of slack carryover, the equation is performing better. And these are all some dynamics I'm not talking here. I would like to conclude this based on this theoretical approach. We could able to say that the tapping temperature and the viscosity of the slack and the carbon and the sulfur present in the liquid steel, that is a crude steel, plays major role in controlling the amount of slack carryover. The occurrence of slack carryover is dictated by the BOF design, the nozzle diameter, and what are all the things we discussed in the previous slides. And the amount of slack carryover is primarily dictated by the physicochemical aspects of the process. The parameters are listed here. So now let us move to the another case study. As I told, the earlier one is the cold model using the water and the oil, the water model. And now we have also studied some continuous casting phenomena using a hot model. So there I would like to see, I would like to give a brief introduction on the continuous casting process here. You know that this is a water cooled copper mold and it is in oscillation, and this is a liquid steel that is getting coming from the submerged entry nozzle, and there is a mold flux which is charged on the top of the liquid steel, and that gets melt, and then it will form a liquid flux which will get infiltrated between the copper shell and the steel shell, a copper mold and the steel shell, and it will provide lubrication and it will control the heat transfer so as to prevent any early crack formation. So you have to protect your liquid steel, means the solid shell that is forming from the liquid steel, like a newborn baby in this stage, so as to keep that, ensure the quality of the billet that rely on controlling the parameters of the continuous casting in the mold region. It is very, very essential. If you miss anything out here, then your product, whatever you are forming, that will be a defected piece. You will end up with some sort of cracks, internal crack, means surface cracks, longitudinal cracks or transfer cracks, whatnot. Okay? So here, the mold powder plays a very important role. Let us see, the mold powder that is lying above the liquid steel, the phenomena that is primarily the phenomena involved here is melting of the mold powder, and that is being controlled by melting. That is, the melting rate of the mold powder is being controlled by chemical composition, granule size, melting point, and the melting rate. Okay, how fast it can melt and how fast it can generate liquid flux. Okay, so as it can supply between this copper mold and the steel shell to provide the lubrication. Okay, and the another important function is it will absorb some amount of inclusions. So the final cleanliness control in the liquid steel is happening at this point. Your mold flux should have some capacity to hold some inclusions. Okay, at the same time, the property of the mold flux or the liquid flux that should not get altered because of this inclusion. So you are having a very narrow window to play here to control the casting process in terms of designing the mold flux. And if you see the phenomena that is happening here, primarily I told the heat flux that is controlled, that extraction, the heat extraction is being controlled by the liquid flux and the solid flux, primarily depends upon the viscosity of the mold flux, fluidity point, break temperature, crystallization behavior, and there are several properties like this one can list out. So in our hot model, we are going to simulate in the first model, we are going to simulate this melting behavior, and in the second one, we are going to simulate this, the casting behavior in the hot model. Let us see how we have done. So the first experimental setup is something like this. We have taken it in to study the melting rate of the mold flux. We have taken an induction coil, and then where the crucibles are kept inside, and the liquid steel is first generated. And in the induction, under induction field, the electromagnetic induction field, only the ferro materials will get heat up. And when you add the mold flux, the unidirectional heating means the heat being supplied by the liquid steel to the mold, that is happening in this setup. Okay, which is also happening here, where the liquid steel is basically providing heat to heating up. So in this fashion, you can estimate the melting rate. Carefully, you can estimate, and after your experiment, you can see the molten metal, that is solidified ingot, will be there, and the molten flux will be there, which is quenched here. And above the molten flux, you can find a sintered flux, and above the sintered flux, there will be a granular flux. So all these characteristic layers are forming in your industry also. So you are quite able to simulate the process, that the melting phenomena, by using this technique, so as to determine the melting rate of a mold powder. So the parameters we varied here are the amount of mold powder, like the amount of mold powder here, it dictates that the bed height in the industry, 5 centimeter bed height of mold powder, 10 centimeter bed height of mold powder, that. And the frequency, the induction frequency here we have taken. This will simulate your electromagnetic stirring. In the industry, you are having some electromagnetic stirring. The liquid is being stirred. So here also, by changing the frequency and the current of the induction coil, you could able to change, you could able to vary the stirring capacity that is being generated in the liquid steel, and ultimately the time. The time you can hold it for a long time, and then you can check how it is behaving. So with this, we could able to estimate that the melting rate of the mold powder for the pertitic grade, it comes around 0.0069 gram per second, and for the IF grade 0.0045 gram per second. Okay, no, sorry, this is IF and this is pertitic. Okay, and by changing the, as I told, by changing the induction current or the frequency, we could able to see that the amount of molten flux that is forming is increasing. It means it is also giving one another information. When you increase the current, the liquid steel temperature is increasing. So if you have a superheat of high superheat, means increasing the superheat in your sequence, then you will end up with more amount of molten flux that can be produced in the industry. So that information is also generated for different amount of bed height, 5 centimeter, 5 mm, and 10. Sorry, it is 5 centimeter and the 10 centimeter. It is both are, I think, wrongly it is. And here also there is one very flagship method to calculate the melting rate, that is like KC Mills method. You can see several investigators have developed their own method of melting rate measurement, and you can see our method is more or less equal to KC Mills method of estimation. Okay, so this experimental simulation to estimate this melting rate is validated for the KC Mills method, which is widely accepted method for measuring the a theoretical method for KC means measuring the melting rate. And in addition to that, we could able to propose another non-dimensionless equation considering the casting parameter. If one want to design the mold powder, all other casting parameters are all coming into picture. In our experimental, it is only the melting part is simulated, but not the casting speed, cross-sectional area, and stroke, and the negative strip time, and this is the casting speed, and this is the what is it? This is a frequency of stroke. Okay, mold frequency, oscillation stroke, cross-sectional area of the mold. Most of the key parameters of castings are considered, and the consumption rate, the mold powder consumption rate, is predicted. And it is reported for most of the industry practice. It is being reported, experimental things are taken and then calculated for our using our equation, and you could see our equation is predicting well enough throughout the range, but not others' equation, other researchers whoever have proposed. So our equation have you can say have a better predictability than other researchers' equation for prediction of mold powder consumption. So this study altogether concludes for the purpose of mold powder designing with respect to mold powder melting rate and mold powder consumption rate in the caster using the actual plant casting parameters. Now let us come to that another part. I told that initial shell formation, hot model study for the physical simulation for the shell formation. The shell formation, as I already told, that is a most critical zone in the continuous caster, where the breakouts and the longitudinal cracking are used to happen for the pertitic grade or even high alloy steels. Basically, this breakout is due to poor lubrication of the mold flux. Okay, poor lubrication means you need more amount of liquid mold flux so as to provide better lubrication. And the crack is generating based on reduction in the heat flux. When you are extracting more amount of heat in a short period of time. In that case, you require you generate crack. So the heat flux need to be controlled. The heat need to be extracted in a very in a gentle way, and that can be done by providing crystallinity in the flux, the liquid mold flux and crystallinity in the flux. That is the reason nowadays controlling crack formation and the breakout in the continuous caster for the new grades are very difficult, very critical. Okay, and it's a challenging task. And we could able to develop a experimental simulation technique to qualify a mold powder considering all these aspects. This is nothing but an inverse mold simulator. This is the induction furnace, and this is the mold simulator, where you can see the copper mold is, this is the gray part is a copper mold, and the green part is basically the steel shell. The details we will explain in the next slide. Let me give a brief introduction to this technique. It is basically introduced by Professor A. Cram in Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, in association with US Steel around 2000. Okay, in the year of 2000, the method is being introduced by Professor A. Cram, the support of US Steel. And in 2010, Professor Ilshon, Yonsei University, Seoul, he has conducted in a higher scale 200-300 kg induction furnace, and the same setup has been established around 2010. Okay, and Professor Wanlin Wang in South Central University, China, around 2012, he established another setup for completely from an academic point of view, and he is studying. So only there were only 3 setups globally arranged, means available for this continuous casting simulation. With the effort of Enamel and Tata Steel, in 2018, we started this research and we designed ourselves for indigenous design for this setup. With adopting some strategy, we could able to develop, and then we could able to perform experiments on the simulator. Okay, that is by 2018. One thing I would like to draw your attention here, you might have come across a news that POSCO Steel have taken a trial on lightweight steel, trip steel by 2012 or something around. Okay, so if you want to make any new steel, particularly this lightweight steel or high alloy steels, those all are having poor castability. So to study the castability, to optimize the casting process, this sort of equipment is very much essential. Any new grade, if you want to envisage in your plant, then you should ensure the castability of that steel. So you can see Professor Ilshon has started his research by 2010 by setting up this setup, and in 2012 the POSCO is releasing another commercial trial for a lightweight steel. So there is a the events can be related, the sequence, the research and the published literatures are around 2010 and 11, and the commercial trial is happening 2012. So these are the kind of experimental technique that India should definitely have to progress ahead in the steel domain. Okay, so with the generous support of Tata Steel, CSR Enamel have established this setup, and now I will explain how this setup is working and how the simulation is taking place. It is basically a simulator which consists of a copper mold. You can see the copper mold and the cooling lines are arranged, and this gray color is nothing but a steel shell. All the 3 faces of the copper mold are covered, and one face is partly covered. Okay, and there are different motors. The motor M1 will perform the oscillation of the copper mold with the exact similar oscillation frequency and the stroke that is being happening in the industry, and the M2 will assist in pulling down this steel shell during the simulation process. That velocity will simulate the casting velocity. Let us see in a couple of minutes how this velocity is simulated for casting. And the motor M3, basically it is to move up and down the whole setup to move up and down for simulation purpose. So here the pictorial view, you can see this is the liquid steel, and initially first you have to dig the setup, and you have to maintain the meniscus of the liquid steel and the mold powder exactly in this half covered phase. The meniscus has to lie on this half covered. this portion of the steel shell will act as a dummy bar in your industry. It will simulate the dummy bar role. Initially, the dummy bar will be placed and then dummy bar will be pulled down. Okay, so that function is being going to done by this steel shell. That where I told this motor M2 will pull down this steel shell alone. This mold will be in oscillation always. Okay, when you are pulling down this mold, basically the liquid steel will rise. Okay, the volume displacement will rise your liquid steel, and hence also your meniscus level will rise. If the meniscus level changes, then the casting simulation will not happen. So you have to maintain the meniscus level always with respect to the reference line in your mold. Okay, this you can see. Initially, the meniscus is here, and the green cover is here. And when you are pulling down, you have to maintain the meniscus level always here. Okay, understanding? I think I am able to deliver clearly here. The initial solidification will form here, and you are pulling down that. When you are pulling down, and the liquid steel will flow. The new fresh liquid steel will face the copper mold, and the casting will happen. How it is happening? You can see just this part of my slide. I am just exaggerating here, and I am just telling you. At a t is equal to 0, at a time is equal to 0, the steel shell is here, and the initial solidification will take place. And remember, the copper mold is in oscillation. The copper mold is now in oscillation, and now the initial shell will form. And when I give the automation command, the steel shell will go down. It means you are pulling down the initial formed shell so as to simulate the continuous casting process. Okay, the steel cover, as the steel cover moves down, the velocity of the cover that is moving down is basically simulating your casting speed. Now I think it is clear that how this downward velocity is getting simulated for the casting speed. So here in this simulation, the actual casting speed is considered, mold oscillation is considered, mold frequency is considered, and the actual steel is considered, and actual mold flux is considered, and finally you are evaluating the steel shell, how it is being formed. Okay, let us see. This is what the trial we have taken. The first trial, we have taken in the wax, because we are not very confident how to, suddenly a water cooled copper mold at 14 liter per minute water is circulating in the copper mold. And frankly, I don't have confidence. I did not have that confidence to dip it in the liquid steel. If anything had happened, I will be the person to take responsibility. In that case, we were taken several trials in different metal, material. The first one is here. You can see in the wax we have taken. Just by dipping in the wax, the casting process have been visualized. You can see the oscillation marks are generated. And then we slowly increase the temperature, and then we could able to perform it in the molten aluminum. You can see clearly the oscillation marks as it is being generated in your industry. And the encircled region shows that mold powder infiltration, or the mold film, that the slag film that is being attached. And this is the trial we could develop in our performed in our liquid steel, where you can see again the oscillation marks are clearly visible. These oscillation marks are totally depend upon your mold oscillation frequency and the stroke length and the casting speed. Okay, and this encircled region is the region where the mold flux, that slag film has not been properly adhered. This shiny portion is nothing but the metallic portion, where the adherence of the slag was having some problem, so it could not adhere properly. So the heat transfer control might went wrong here. Okay, now you can see we performed with the two steel, one is patritic steel and the IF steel. You can see with increasing the length, the thickness is increases. You're able to understand this is the meniscus region. The last solidified region is this one, and this is the first solidified. Initially it got solidified, and then it is being pulled down. As we are pulling down, the fresh liquid is coming, depositing by maintaining the meniscus at a particular point. If the main meniscus is not maintained at a particular point, the simulation will not happen. In case of IF steel, there was a problem. It was not casted properly. You could able to see from the figure itself, the thickness is not proper. So let us see how this will reflect in my heat flux to evaluate the performance of the heat. In another way, we have also the surface is being profiled using the 3D profilometer. You could able to see the well-defined oscillation marks in the pertitic steel, and the oscillation marks are very poorly defined in IF steel. From a common man point of view, by seeing the thickness in the previous slide, I could able to see there is some problem it had happened with the IF steel. Okay, that is visualized in profilometer also. Mixed study, profilometer study also. And now I forgot to mention one thing. In the copper mold, we have arranged a series of thermocouples. Around 16 thermocouples were arranged in 2 rows, say 3 mm from the surface and 8 mm from the surface. The thermal history of the copper mold is collected, and it is used for heat flux estimation. Like here it is given, the inverse heat transfer problem. It means one row and there is another row is there. The T is known for this 2 row. The heat flux can be calculated and the surface temperature of the mold can be calculated. Okay, it is by giving the effect and calculating the cause. That is why it is called inverse heat transfer problem. By this way, we could able to calculate the surface temperature of the mold. The surface temperature of the mold is another critical parameter in the plant to optimize. Okay, and one another thing is the heat flux. What is the heat flux? That we will see in this slide. You can see here for the pertitic steel, the dotted line it is shown, that is nothing but the surface temperature. Okay, the surface temperature has smoothly got increased, and the heat is this curve, the bottom curve, and which has also increased in a gradual manner. And you can see the peak surface temperature is 93 degrees Celsius, and the peak heat flux is nothing but 4 megawatt per meter square. But in case of IF steel, we could be able to see there is a spike of surface temperature. It means the mold infiltration, mold powder infiltration has not happened properly, and that reflected in heat flux also. There is a shoot up of temperature, and there is a shoot up of heat fluxes is there. So that we can conclude that by understanding in this way, we can conclude that there is a problem with the IF steel and IF flux what we used, and in either in a way of selection of flux and steel or in a way of operational parameter. So in this way, I can conclude that in a holistic way, you can optimize the casting process using this physical part model technique. Okay, I think this is the last slide for me. I am not intentionally, I am not here to conclude the subject because there are many things yet to do here. But for the sake of completion, I would like to re-emphasize that physical simulation techniques are a kind of experimental tool that process industry need to use to improve the efficiency of the process, and also to have a better understanding, to create a better understanding of the process. This setups can be, this physical technique, simulation technique can be used in a better way. With this, I would like to end my talk.